Good morning! Welcome to Sunday Morning Announcements with the Kathy Gray Avatar. If you're with us on Facebook or YouTube, please subscribe to get notifications when we have new videos. If you're with us on Zoom, say hi in the chat. We'd love to say hello back. And if you're with us in person, hello everybody here. And if this is your first visit, please sign the guest book either in the lobby or online at oakcliffuu.org/guest. A note about a new weekly feature for the folks here in person. In the area we call the pass-through, between the lobby and the sanctuary, you can meet your board. Today, we have Treasurer Johnny Tatman. Do you have questions, concerns, or opinions to share with our board? Every Sunday morning, starting at 9:30 and ending when the service begins, a member of our board, either in person or appearing on a tablet via Zoom, will be available to meet with our members, friends, and visitors, ready to discuss everyone's thoughts. Today, Renee Brill is in the pulpit with the second part of her service on the significance of covenant to us as UUs. Faithfully together, faithfully different. Covenant, listening, vulnerability, and hope. The spiritual practices of Unitarian Universalism and beloved community. We hope you can stick around after the service for Talkback, where we gather in a circle and discuss the sermon and related topics. After the service, Adult Religious Exploration with Sarah Rickey is back with Owning Your Religious Past, a program designed to help UUs reckon with their various religious upbringings and integrate them into their current spiritual lives. Join on Zoom or in person in the Hope Library at 11:15. Today's topic is Claiming the Positives. Coming up, our Widening the Circle of Concern work group continues to meet on Monday at 7 p.m. Please join us by attending the weekly meeting and or submitting your comments and suggestions via email at wcoc@oakcliffuu.org. Note that the presentation by Renee Brill at the Fall Parish meeting about the planned DEI workshop is now available on our church website. Please view it or review it in preparation for the next vote. This Thursday, November 30th, the Social Justice Ministry Reading Group will resume meeting with a new book, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, a novel by Sherman Alexie. Questions? Contact Mavis at sjm@oakcliffuu.org. Have you heard about December 3rd? There are 3 things you need to know. 1. After the service, there will be a special meeting to vote on the motion from the Widening the Circle of Concern work group to begin implementation of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Workshop at UUCOC. 2. After the meeting, we'll hold our beloved holiday potluck. And 3. This year, we'll try a new take on an old theme. It's gone by other names, but to be more descriptive, we'll have a Grinch gift exchange. We'll have new rules this year to keep things fast and fun. Also that first week of December, the First Tuesday Film Festival will be back with Girls on the Wall, a documentary about the teenage girls of Warrenville Prison who get a shot at redemption in a most unlikely form, a musical based on their lives. We are planning a winter solstice celebration this year for Friday evening, December 22nd. And on Christmas Day, our 10 a.m. service will feature multiple voices from our congregation and a Christmas cookie communion. If you have a favorite Christmas story you'd like to share, please contact worship@oakcliffuu.org. Details of all this and more can be found in the back of your order of service and in the weekly e-blast. Not receiving the e-blast? Just sign up at oakcliffuu.org/e-news. It's that easy. And that's it for now. Have a great Sunday and rest of the week. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff. Let us begin our sacred work with these words from Reverend Gretchen Haley. The longing for something more. Every little thing that breaks your heart is welcome here. We'll make space for it. Give it its due time and praise and the wanting it represents, the longing for something more, some healing hope that remains not yet. We promise no magic, no making it all better, but offer only this circle of trust, this human community that remembers, though imperfectly, that sings and prays, though sometimes awkwardly, this gathering that loves, though not yet enough. We're still practicing, after all, still learning, still in need of help and partners, still becoming able to receive all this beauty and all these gifts that we each bring. Come, let us worship together. May our faith be renewed and reignited. Words for the Chalice Lighting by Dr. Rebecca A. Savage. We light our flaming chalice each week with a simple spark to make holy our time together. With this flame, may our highest intentions be refreshed. With this flame, may we remember who we are and whose we are. With this flame, may our faith be renewed and reignited to guide our journey. Amen, and may it be so.
Please rise and body your spirit as able. Y'all, great job.
At this time in the service, we take time to share what is in our hearts and on our minds. If your heart is heavy today, know that you don't have to carry that heartache alone. Together, we can offer comfort. Please share your sorrows publicly by posting them in the Zoom chat, or send them to our Facebook Messenger, or speak them aloud.
Breathe out
We also share our joys with one another, knowing that joy calls unto joy amplified. Together, our voices can rise in a chorus of celebration. Please share your joys publicly by posting them to the Zoom chat, or send them to our Facebook Messenger, or speak them aloud. Next is an actual welcome to the UU Church of Oak Cliff. Here we gather in sanctuary where we're free to pursue our own unique and individual spiritual journeys in an atmosphere of acceptance, compassion, and celebration. We seek to build a community where what you believe is less important than how your beliefs guide and inform your participation in the world. Ours is a community that values the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. To our returning visitors, we're so happy you've joined us again. We know your time is precious, and we're honored to have you here today. And we'd like to extend a warm welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. We recognize the bravery it took to come into a new place, and we're glad you're here. Ours is a covenantal church. Latin for come together. Covenant means a solemn agreement or promise from the heart regarding a course of action between parties. The practice of promising to walk together is the core of our faith. Simply put, it's a guide for the behavior we expect from ourselves and each other. We are bound together by the promises we make to one another, and we recite our covenant during every worship service. Because we love one another, we honor each individual's spiritual journey. We celebrate life's abundance in service to each other, our community, and the world. We connect with each other in love, respect, and acceptance. Thus, we do covenant together.
Porque nos amamos uno al otro, honoramos el viaje espiritual de cada individuo. Celebramos la abundancia de la vida en el servicio a entre sí, nuestra comunidad y el mundo. Ponemos en contacto a unos con otros en el amor, respeto y excepción. Así que hacemos pacto.
Please welcome Renee Brill.
Good morning. I would like to invite you into a moment of prayer with me or meditation. I'll leave some space for silent prayer or meditation, and then I'll begin with a verbal prayer before we start. So however it is that you prefer to pray or meditate in your body, in a chair or standing, I'd invite you to do that now. Spirit of life and love, at this time of celebration, of being together with family chosen and inherited, for some, we remember that it is also a time of loneliness, of sadness, of remembrance of the harms of colonization and genocide of our Native brothers and sisters. Be with us as we hold this complexity as a people. Be with us in our love and compassion, in our listening and our moving with one another. To remember that we need not all be celebrating or sad or remembering the same in order to treat each other with the kindness and compassion that we each deserve. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. Good morning. I am coming to you pre-recorded from Carrollton, Texas, which is not what I was expecting. I was expecting to be in person this morning. But through my complacency and other things, I was exposed to COVID shortly after arriving in Texas, and so I'm staying home until the incubation period is over or I test positive, and then there's other things I have to do. But it sort of as a result of this, my family is renegotiating some of our agreements around coming together around the holidays in order to avoid this happening again. And it feels really thematically appropriate for our subject of topic today, which is covenant. I think that the holidays really are a good illustration of all of the complexity around our choosing to be together. Sometimes in leftist and liberal circles and progressive circles, we might kind of have this ideal of we all kind of go along to get along, or let's all just be nice and peaceful and live together, and kind of operate from this basic assumption of being able to be all things to all people, which isn't necessarily correct. And I think we also have this idea that there's one right decision to how we are together, when in reality there's different decisions that we can make. And so what me and my family decide for ourselves is allowed to be different from what you and your family decide for one another. And that there doesn't need to be like a lot of moral shame or finger wagging around those things. Right? We can have even multiple Thanksgivings, right? In my house, we have both my parents are divorced, both my spouse's parents are divorced, and so we will have multiple holiday celebrations throughout the season that have kind of their own different rules and expectations and norms around what is and isn't allowed. And I know that this idea of deciding how to be together and who to be with is something that resonates with very, very many people today. So there's very many people who would choose not to be with their inherited families. They would prefer to be with their chosen families, either out of proximity, or it might also be because their inherited families don't respect or honor or make space for the boundaries that you might have set, whereas your chosen families would respect your boundaries. And follow certain norms that make you feel safe, comfortable, happy, whole, right? There's so many examples that we can give of this, right? So we might not choose to invite a relative if they're not willing to respect the pronouns of our children or insist on dead naming our friend who we've invited. We might change our New Year's Eve plans from a big happy booze up and toasting the new year with champagne into a non-alcohol party if one of our friends has recently become sober, as a way of expressing both our gratitude for that choice and our support of that choice. But we also might choose to uninvite someone who, before they attained sobriety, caused physical or emotional harm to other guests at the table, right? There's a whole spectrum of how we decide to be together. And a lot of that has to do with whether or not we can agree on the rules of what respect and kindness look like to one another, right? So there are some families that would say, you can't expect your great-great-grandmother to understand all these things about gender norms and la la la. And so just go along to get along. And for other families, that is just not acceptable if it makes if it causes harm or is disrespectful to other members of the family. Now, that decision in and of itself might be different if the relative who can't do pronouns has dementia or Alzheimer's. There might be some extra space for that. There's all kinds of ways, from do we decide to have a vegetarian Thanksgiving because somebody just became a vegetarian, or is maybe that a step too far? I really have to have my turkey. And maybe that depends on who just became a vegetarian, right? If it's someone who I really, really miss and want to be able to spend that time with, I might be more willing to stretch my expectations or change my traditions. Or maybe to have a second celebration or a third celebration with people who have similar expectations around what we're going to do to celebrate. Now, in Unitarian Universalism, we have a religious, spiritual practice of doing this kind of negotiating of how we are together. When we say that we're a covenantal faith as opposed to a creedal faith, that's what we mean. In a creedal faith, there's an agreed set on rules of how we believe about a thing. But in a covenantal faith, what we're agreeing is how to behave with one another. And that's really what our covenants are. It's our agreement to both to be together and how we are going to be together. So what does respect look like? Well, for someone of one generation or even from a certain place, respect looks like using sir and ma'am. And for another person of another generation or another who grew up in another location, calling someone ma'am is insulting, or even, it might be insulting or a little bit too stiff, right? We have this agreement that we try to listen to one another, to share deeply, but also to listen equally deeply. And yet there are some things we're not necessarily prepared to make space for. So while Unitarian Universalists really value dissent and talking together about certain issues, we tend to limit that to things that are open topics, so to speak, undecided topics. So we don't necessarily argue or discuss whether or not gravity exists or whether or not the earth revolves around the sun, but we might and do have deep discussions about reincarnation and the existence or non-existence of one or many gods. But we do believe in certain ways of demonstrating the respect for the inherent worth and dignity of other people. So that would mean respecting pronouns, making sure we're not using someone's dead name, affirming the whole living of LGBTQIA plus folks, and letting everyone celebrate the love of their own family, regardless of whether or not that family conforms to heteronormative roles. And we're really not interested in debating that. So we're really not interested in hearing the perspective of people who believe that queer people are in some way violating the commands of nature or a God. Because we collectively, as Unitarian Universalists, have researched, learned, and listened to queer people and come to a collective decision around the validity of this as a whole way of being, and see the questioning of that as profoundly disrespectful, rightfully so. So there are kinds of dissent that we allow, and there are kinds of dissent that we don't allow because it causes harm or for a number of other reasons. And each individual congregation is going to make different decisions around that. And each individual congregation can make different decisions depending on where they are in time, right? A congregation might have made a different decision in 1950 than it's going to make today, than it's going to make in 50 or 60 years from now. The belief that we can change as we learn more, and that we can do better as we learn more, is very inherent, I believe, to our Unitarian Universalist faith practice. Now, what that means is we're in our practice of covenanting and our practice of listening to one another, and being vulnerable and making space for our whole humanness, we are also making decisions about what gets excluded and why. Maybe because it makes someone unsafe, maybe because it is unwelcoming to a certain group or population, and maybe because it's just not our style, right? Our particular congregation is a smaller congregation. If someone really wants to be in a great big beautiful cathedral with stained glass, we might not be the right place for them because that's a really long way off, assuming we ever decide to go that direction, right? So there's all kinds of reasons why we would choose to be together and choose not to be together. These practices of covenanting, of listening, and of vulnerability are also a practice of making, growing, and building hope for ourselves and for one another. The hope that, well, if I make a mistake, I can be forgiven. Or if I make a mistake, I can find a way to make amends. Or if I make a mistake, I can learn to do better next time. The hope that we can be imperfect in our own humanness and still build that beloved community that we long for. Even when, as is often the case, we disagree with each other a lot. And maybe sometimes we act with one another how we might act on social media, the notorious outrage machine of the 21st century, or how we act at work instead of how we act with our friends or how we act with our family. That is our work together, and it's the work that our congregation is really needing right now. The last time our congregation updated its covenant was more than 10 years ago, and long enough ago that many of our current members were not able to participate in that process. And we have learned and changed a lot since the last time we updated our covenant. Unitarian Universalism has learned and changed a lot since we last updated our covenant. And one of the reasons why we want to keep redoing this is so that we can make space for change, for learning, and for becoming the people that we long to be. And out of recognition that we aren't there yet. So what I'd like from you is a couple of things. I'd like you to start getting excited about this as an opportunity for spiritual practice that you want to participate in. I promise you that regardless of the outcome of our covenant writing or rewriting or retaining, the act of considering and discussing and listening together with other Unitarian Universalists, that is a spiritual practice that will deeply and profoundly change your spiritual life. It will deeply and profoundly offer you a wealth of spiritual learning and teaching. So I'm really excited about this work that we're going to do. The other thing is that I want to make sure that this is the work of the congregation and not necessarily the work of the board or the work of any one person. This has to be collective work. It has to be something we do together. And part of doing that is trying to find and acknowledge who our own personal safe space or teacher or patient guide is. There's a great difficulty around being vulnerable, right? Feeling safe enough to be vulnerable, feeling safe enough to talk about our differences together. And not every person is going to be that person. And for example, like I know I'm not that for everybody. There's plenty of folks in our congregation who don't know or trust me. And the same is true for all of us, right? So if you're interested in being that placeholder, that holder of sacred space where this deeply spiritual conversation can happen about how we want to be together, if you're interested in being that person, I'd really like to invite you to come forward either to the board or to another religious leader who you would like to volunteer for. And I would also ask that if maybe you're not that person, if there's a person that you particularly trust and admire in the congregation, I'd be interested in hearing that person nominated, because I know a lot of folks don't know how important their opinions or their presence really is. Sometimes we don't believe we're as important or as valued as we actually are. So if there's a person that you really respect and would like to help facilitate or create this space where we can do all of this work together, I would really love to hear that. I'm sure your board would also love to hear that. And lastly, I want to acknowledge that we are starting anew in some important ways. And we are going to and have been experiencing a lot of friction and conflict and disagreements around who we are and who we want to be. And ask that we hold each other gently in that process and kindly in that process. Because although we have some basic agreements over who we long to be, we might actually find that what I need is different from what you need. And I hope that we can commit to finding that place for each one of us, even if this place is not that place. I also really hope, even though I said we can't be all things to all people, I do want to be the place for everyone in Oak Cliff who needs a place to be their whole selves, to be heard, and to grow the hope that we so desperately need, that the world can be made better and that we can be a part of doing it. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
Thank you. If you would, please join me as we recite our Widening the Circle of Concern covenant. We, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff, commit ourselves to the study and dismantling of racism and oppression within our congregation. We commit our congregation and ourselves to the work of anti-racism and anti-oppression. We commit ourselves to listening, to learning, and to action. When we fail, we commit ourselves to trying again and again. We covenant to begin this work and to continue until all of us can truly say that we are a beloved community of justice, equity, and compassion. Thank you. I'll say up front, I'm winging it. I know what I want to talk about. Scott, do you have a slide for me? There we go. But I didn't script this out word by word. What I wanted to bring to your attention today is something that I just discovered and have not yet explored in its fullness. I came across reference to this webinar from 2019. I just came across it this past week and I haven't watched it yet. But in 2019, there was a multi-faith online panel discussion exploring the ways in which Black Unitarian Universalists and others from related traditions make sense of their collective faith journeys toward liberation and an affirmation of wholeness. It's a couple of hours. I'll make sure that the link is available in on the Facebook or wherever it needs to be for y'all to be able to find it. And I'm going to be watching it in the next week or two. And the reason that I went, oh yeah, that's something I need to listen to, is that we have historically in this congregation been a predominantly white congregation. We have had little pockets of time here and there when we had a more of a mixture. But we have had issues. That's one of the reasons why we have a Widening the Circle of Concern covenant now. And as accessible and wonderful as our board members of color who are with us this morning, Johnny and Yolanda, are and want to be in helping us be a better church and meet people's needs more expansively, the whole load is not to be on them of being, the explainers for everything that might happen. One of the ways that people, myself included, can learn more expansively is by looking to the voices of folks who have addressed these issues, who've already put their time and effort and their deep knowledge into addressing these questions that, for example, questions that were considered during this 2-hour discussion included, what are the distinctions between how Unitarian Universalism is promoted in the larger society versus the folks of color, experiences of the faith? How would a Unitarian Universalism grounded in blackness be different from what has been taught and promoted about this faith tradition? How do we thoughtfully, folks of color, thoughtfully and responsibly build our own theology that centers the best of Unitarian Universalism and our experience as Black people of faith and consciousness? This discussion was moderated by Reverend Mikhail Schlack and Dr. Takaya Amin. And I want to go back in particular to that first question that they talk about. What are the distinctions between between how Unitarian Universalism is promoted in the larger society versus the experiences of people of color in this faith? It's been said by more than one person in this congregation and in this denomination and in the Unitarian Universalism at large. Well, we have our first principle. If we would just abide by our first principle, we wouldn't need to do all this digging and scratching and painful self-exploration and whatnot. If people would just, if, and that is the big as if, that in my understanding from the years that now I've been working with and talking with the Widening the Circle of Concern report and the other aspects of learning to do better, that is my understanding, is that if is not a reality. It has not been a reality for decades in this denomination. We have fallen short as a denomination. And in my opinion, we as a congregation, we've fallen short. But as Renee said in her sermon, this is a place to learn better, a place where we can do better, a place where screwing things up is not a mark of, that's it, never again. You are, just, I don't know very many people. I don't know if I could name anybody that I personally know, that I think is irredeemably lost to being eventually within a loving community, being part of a beloved community. Anyway, so I wanted to share with you that I discovered this video. There's 2 hours of folks of color exploring this topic of how they experience this faith and how they might hope to experience this faith. And I think it is a good opportunity for us, people who are not people of color, to sit over on the sidelines and listen. Because, I think that's repeated in our covenant a couple of times. When we fail, we'll try again. We will listen, learn. So I just wanted to share with y'all that I think this is one of the many resources that are out there to be able to hear in depth from voices other than our own. And I also did want to note on still a Widening the Circle concern topic, but on a slightly different topic, I also noticed so many things that were on the calendar of remembrances and events and holidays. It is such a crowded calendar. I personally don't have any aptitude for keeping up with everything, but one of the things that did jump out at me as I was doing worship service research for the week was to note that last Monday was the Transgender Day of Remembrance. And on that, I just want to offer these few lines from a prayer by Reverend Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. May we come to a time when we cease to shame children around gender roles and expression, where we allow for freedom and exploration of identity and expression, and to a world that operates from love. Thank you.
As Reverend Rebecca Ann Parker says in Choose to Bless the World, you must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will. It's an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. To bless the work of this church, we ask now that you make an offering. Members, if you're contributing cash toward your pledge, please use an envelope from the basket and write your name on it. To text your donation, see the number on the order of your service. And for more options, you can always see oakcliffuu.org/donate. Our closing words today are A First Step Faith by Reverend Scott Taylor. Go with faith, not the kind that is called to move mountains, but the quieter sort that calls us to take the first step, even when the whole staircase sits beyond our view. And as we move toward the unseen, may we notice that the way unfolds only as we risk traveling it. And may we remember and trust that on this journey, we are never alone. Amen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Extinguimos esta llama, pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Estos los llevaremos en el corazón hasta que estemos juntos otra vez.
Thank you.